All righty. Hello, everybody. Want to give everybody a couple minutes here to stall and build up our attendance list. I do have a special guest here that I'm going to give them a chance to introduce themselves, but I do want to go on some ground rules. So first and foremost, if you're joining, you're likely a student. This is our panel. I guess you could call it one-on-one panel, fireside talk. We'll be talking about membership engagement as well as retention, two big things that make a chapter exist, I would say, in my opinion. But I am joined by Emmanuel. So I guess before we do the intros, I'll do some ground rules. Kind of like in the opening session, we have a couple of boxes there on your right side of the screen. We've got a chat and a Q&A. So in your chat, feel free to throw in anything you want. You can talk about your favorite movie. You can talk about your favorite conference. But as far as Q&A goes, if you've got questions regarding chapter retention or engagement, feel free to throw it there. I'll be monitoring that and asking the questions as they come in. So our conversation is going to flow just like a one-on-one. I'll be interviewing Emmanuel. Feel free to interview me as well. But let's go ahead and do some introductions. Tell us who you are, maybe what chapter you've represented, and then give me your favorite ship moment.
So, hi everyone. My name is Emmanuel Zabalza. I was the president for Soles, the chapter at UCLA, for 2 years. And I would say my favorite moment would probably be like the very first Soles event that I ever went to when I was first joining as a freshman. It was like beach bonfire just before the school year started, and that was where I first met like the people who then became my mentors to this day.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you, Manuel. And then for myself, my name is Francisco Arriaga. A lot of folks in Region 7 call me Cisco, but whatever rolls off the tongue a little easy. I am representing SHIP Georgia Professional Chapter as well as, again, all of Region 7. And then my favorite SHIP moment, I would say, I might have heard this in the opening ceremony, but it was the day that I put on the shark costume. I remember being so nervous, running around, just dancing around during all DC 2020 in Atlanta. Took a lot of pictures with everybody, but yeah, I was super, super sweaty, but it was still really good experience. So if you all, I'm hoping y'all did your homework and you watched the video where Emmanuel here presented on engagement and retention. I'm going to be touching on, on some of those areas, but let me start off with a really easy question. And can you think back to the first ship event that you ever attended? Um, what was it that really attracted you to the event? What was the engaging part of that event? I don't know if it was the one you just mentioned or is there another one, but yeah, just kind of walk us through that. Like take us a day in the life from your first ship day.
Yeah, so it was that first beach bonfire, and kind of what attracted me was just like it was a community Latino, so I was like, just curious to see, in addition to it being like my first time interacting with other like college students from UCLA, since this was like coming out of COVID, it was really like meeting them and them immediately being super welcoming, like as soon as I spoke with one of them, they were like, "Oh my God, you're this major. Oh, you have this interest." They immediately pointed me to five other people who also had those same interests and whatnot, and it just became a moment of just like mentoring, just welcoming a lovely familia. That's kind of really what like cemented me, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna stay. I'm gonna come back to their first general meeting."
Awesome. Awesome. And I guess just building on to that, were there any really good friends that you met during that were like, hey, like you should come, you should stay, or did you end up bringing anyone else to that first general body meeting?
To that first general body meeting, I kind of entered with some of the other freshmen within my cohort, but one of the people that I really wanted to shout out to is this guy named Juan Bunches. He was a fourth year at the time when I first met him. And this guy was like super stacked. He was the one who convinced me to go to that first Ship Nationals convention back in 2021. And it's I would say because of him pushing me that I was able to get my first internship.
Awesome. That's great to hear. I do remember my first ship event, and like many others, folks in this call or tuning in can relate. I was attracted by like free pizza. Well, I guess even before that, what attracted me to so I went to Clemson University. We called it Tiger Prow. We're a bunch of Latinos in STEM. I'm like, hey. I'm a Latino in STEM. And whenever they would go in and just talk about what the general body meeting was, I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Like it's the pizza I'm really here for. So initially, a lot of chapters will go in and reel you in through that. But I think some of the chapters who have been in this game for a long time have come up with really creative ideas at these sort of hydro prows or these career fairs for these organizations. Do you have something similar at your chapter? And I want to start off this way. In the engagement part, because we'll get to the retention later. A lot of these students are getting ready to go to college. They're going to be setting up these little booths for their ship chapters. Do you do anything similar for your chapter? And if you do, what makes it successful?
Absolutely. Um, for us, we have two big club fairs that we attend. One is for like is like a general to the public called the Enormous Activities Fair, and that's something that every single club on campus attends. In addition, there's also one specific to engineering, and at each of these events, we compile a whole list of goodies to give out to people, whether that be shirts like past general membership shirts from past years. Last year, I was able to get a bunch of the magnets for the ship convention in LA to hand those out, as well as like stickers at the Mercado. If your president or vice president ever go to the president summit, that's a very good place to get really good merch for members to give out, as well as just like little treats, something for people to hold on to and remember, like, wow, like this club was so kind, so welcoming. And so that's kind of like the goodies to give out. But another key thing that we found was really important is, once we get the people interested, it's like, okay, how do they get involved? It's then having some event for the new people, for returning members to immediately go back to. And it has to be something super fun, super engaging. That way, you can really hook onto them, because it's not only a matter of just getting people interested. It's also a matter of competing with all of the other clubs who are gunning at the attention of your fellow members. And so it's being
Right.
very strategic about that, about, okay, what's in my area, what's a really fun traditional thing that first year students do, and excelling at it.
Perfect. Yeah, just to add on to like the goodies, I know at Clemson we had this 3D printer lab, and we were broke, right? Some chapters might struggle with like finance issues at school, banking, might not have the funds right away, but there are ways you can get creative. And for us, it was going to that 3D printer lab and printing out like these ship logos for your keychains, things like that. So go wild. Your mind is whatever, right? And then as far as that event that you talked about that you have to have for your returning members to come back and for new members to go in and meet and greet everyone else, would you consider these like annual events? And you probably have more than just the one, right? You've probably got these annual events, two, three, four, five of them. How soon would you start planning for that? Would you wait till August when the school semester starts, or are you doing that now in the summer?
So we try to start planning events and have them fully fleshed out at least 3 weeks beforehand. And so that would mean starting planning maybe a month and a half beforehand. Us at UCLA, we start at the end of September, and so we would start like mid-August, like talking about, here's what we're planning, here's food that we're looking into, and then have everything ordered at least 2 weeks before.
Perfect. So I did get a question in the Q&A, and kind of related to this. I guess here you can define the different types of events because one might take a little longer to plan, one might take like, upwards to 6 months, right? So what would you consider a signature event for your student chapter? And before you answer that, I will say it definitely depends on the size of your chapter, right? If you have a chapter of like 10, 15, 20 members, that could look completely different from that of one with 200 members. But in your example for your chapter, I guess what do you consider a signature event?
I think for us, it would be like our main socials throughout each of the quarters. So like during the fall quarter, I'd say like it definitely is that beach fire. That's something that we have each and every year that attracts a lot of people. Um, for the winter quarter, we have a like a winter, or sorry, not the winter. We have like a talent show that we always have, as well as some sort of like winter party, kind of like white elephant kind of s thing.
Mhm.
And then during the spring quarter, that's when we have our formal, and so it's something for people to dress up at, to dress up. We go to a rooftop on our campus, and then we just have like good beats and food and whatnot.
Mhm. Oh, good deal. Yeah, I remember in undergrad and even at the professional level, right? I know this is students, but here recently we've done a bunch of those similar events. So we are starting to get more Q&A, so go ahead, buckle up and get ready. Before or ask this next question, I also want to talk about like just engaging your board, right? All these chapters have an executive board, whether that's the four members that are required for SHIP or some who expand outside of that because they see that there's a need for different areas. What are some of the ways that you've become creative or your chapter has to engage your leadership board?
So to engage our leadership board, we can't, when we have elections, we select the people who are the most involved, or those are the people who naturally get selected. But within them, we have a system to have some sort of internship cohort that's made up of the freshmen and the sophomores. And so this is something that gives the people on the board a kind of like a higher sense of responsibility. In addition, we also have committees, and that's really useful for really large events, such as like outreach projects where they're talking to like 200, K through 12 students, or maybe technical projects where they're, interacting on a weekly basis of like 10 to 15 students. I would
Hmm.
say those kinds of responsibilities, giving them to the board, giving to people on your board is really useful for keeping them engaged and keep, having something for them to do on a weekly basis.
Gotcha. Now, when I was watching the recordings for CCLP, there's something that you mentioned that I tell my chapter leaders all the time. And what that was is along the lines of, hey, chapter leaders, you are pretty much the face of this organization, whether that's at the regional level, but in most cases, in this case, the chapter level. You told them that you should go out and invite somebody who's sitting by themselves, get to know them, and not be, I guess, too clingy, like some people might put it. Why is that so important for chapter engagement? Why is that like something that you encourage your folks to do?
It's super important because that's what creates the welcoming and familia-like environment. Familia means no one gets left behind, and so having the people who represent the club be at the forefront of creating that culture really invigorates the rest of the members to be like, oh, this is how it's like in this club. I also want to be like that, or I should strive to try to be like that. In addition, it's also a way to hook people because first time attendees, they might not return if they didn't make an immediate connection with one of the members, or maybe they didn't make a friend or come with a friend. And so those people are more likely to be like, well, I don't really know anyone. I don't really feel comfortable. And so those are the people most likely to shy away. And so it's, the culmination of all those things, but most importantly, it's just a way to build a culture that brings retention.
Perfect. All right, so we got another question. I'm going to probably switch over to the retention side of things in like the next 5, 10 or so minutes. But we talked about engagement, we talked about your board, and we kind of hinted on general body meetings. General body meetings are a way that chapters can invite any and everyone from their members. You talk about highlights, you talk about upcoming events. What are some ways that or what are some ways to keep engagement and retention, I guess, during these general body meetings because they're so important, because they're so big, because everyone's there?
Mhm. I think first and foremost, people get really excited about like special events or like games, competitions. Uh, Usually, some of our like signature general body meeting, special events would be like having a piñata around Halloween time, having some sort of like competition game time for some legendary merch prize. In addition to that merch as well, when we release our general body shirt, when we release new like hoodies, whatnot, that's something that also attracts people. But I think first and foremost that everyone should hit off is food. Having some sort of delicious food will always attract people. And what we found is we have an In-N-Out like just outside of campus. Having an In-N-Out themed meeting brings everyone and their mamas. I
Well,
would
what if you don't have an In and Out? No, just kidding. I wish we had In and Out on the East Coast.
Nah. But yeah, things like that. We had pupusas, we've had like burritos, just stuff like that really attracts people because especially when you're having like advertisements, you want to have something that'll hook people. That way they'll come. Because while you're having your meeting, and this is all like for good intentions, a lot of students are, they have a whole bunch of homework, whole bunch of assignments and projects on their side. So you want something to kind of make them excited, to kind of, incentivize, because they can find out all of your events through your social media and whatnot, but you want something to build a community and really, get them to come out of their dorm rooms and, de-stress a bit.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, and I remember you were talking about like the social media and the presence and how important it is to make sure or make sure you're letting the people know that you're super involved, what you got going on, right? That's super, super important. On that same note, you also talked about sort of I wasn't sure if it was like a mentorship point system, but going into like the retention conversation side of things, or any event, whether it's your general body meeting or an annual event, but what are some strategies that you're doing at the chapter level to track retention or metrics or things along that nature?
Yeah, so I think in the slideshow that I presented, I had screenshots from a Google Sheets where we have all of our students' names and then like a yes or no whether they attended an event. That I would say is our first and foremost like primary way of tracking attendance at events, and that's something that's super useful for us. Collect like not only just like rewarding people who come to things and keeping track of that, whether it be for like end of the year awards saying like, oh, this person attended the most amount of events, or thinking back to when you're selecting people to get like sponsorship for like ship nationals, that sort of thing. uh, it's super useful for the like the cute the quarterly reports that we have to fill out. I mentioned how like once you have those numbers in there, you can easily calculate how many hours contributing to ship's goals. That whole system is really really useful.
Mm. Yeah, I completely agree. I know some of the chapters that I've worked with, including my own, we came up with sort of these like tracking system, membership point system to help incentivize members to get more involved, right? Like, hey, thanks for volunteering. Here's a cookie, or here's a portion to registration for a convention, or you can go as creative as you want. I'm going to take another question from Q&A. This is from Mike Henriquez. And it's going to be a tough question. But going back to the engagement side of things, in a perfect world, we would want everybody who hears about Shift to join our events, right? But we don't live in a perfect world. Sometimes folks might look the other way. So going back to the boothing conversation, boothing can be tough, especially when it's not during an involvement fair and students are just power walking to class. What have been your most effective strategies to catching the attention of students who are usually tunnel vision on campus? So the little flashy or the flashy free items aren't working, the food's not working. What else have you done to help attract those members?
One of the strategies that one of my members came up this past year was holding up a like small whiteboard sign that said Latinos in STEM, and then going up to people who think that they fit that description. Kind of like targeting and stepping outside of your booth to engage with them has been really effective. Um, yeah, in addition to all the goodies and whatnot.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Let's see. Going through right now. I'm gonna
Wait,
try to pick
Francisco,
up.
can I add one thing?
Yeah, go
I
for
would
it. Go for it.
I would say our merch is also really effective at catching people's attention. Uh, the merch that we make, it's usually made in mind to be very kind of like in the theme and very just like silly haha. So one of the shirts that we've created is "I love hot engineers," and that attracts all the eyes of people. In addition, a lot of our designs include some sort of like Aztec or Mayan calendar, stuff like that, and that's something that's like just eye popping to people.
Yeah, I know another thing that's been pretty popular have been like the hats, for example, with like two, three, four emojis that represent ship or whatever events you got going on. Be on the lookout for the folks in Region 7. We might have something coming up, so no spoilers. All right, so I've got another question here. Is there any advice for specific conditions in which some events should take place? For example, keep longer events in mind only when there is upcoming or when there isn't upcoming finals for students and stuff like that.
I think that's definitely something to consider when you're making events. Um, for us, UCLA is on the quarter system, so we have to be very strategic about when our students have the time to be mindful to their schedules. And so uh, I think definitely planning around that. If you know that a ton of people will be having midterms a certain week, or if there's some huge game that's happening on a day, definitely avoiding that is super important. For us specifically, we have midterms starting our week 4, all the way until like the end of week 6, and so we avoid huge
Mm,
socials in the middle of that time. And so our like I would say big socials either happen weeks 1 and 2 at the beginning of the quarter, or week 7 after, that's just after all of our midterms should around be done, and then maybe one more like 2 weeks before finals. Like that would probably be like our it schedule, because anything in between is it's kind of not an effective use of resources, since most people will be busy.
mm. No, you got a good point there. I will just quickly say we got maybe a couple more questions, and I just want to say thank you all for dropping those. It's hard to keep up with all of them coming in. I did pull another one I really like here, and just kind of like around the topic of busy time of the semester, exams coming up, right? We're all volunteers, we're all involved in maybe other organizations, but most importantly, we have school going on, right? Classes can be tough. So in those examples, how do you lead by example with the chapter to inspire others forward? Like in those tough situations or in general?
Um, how to lead by example? It's doing your best. If you have a certain if you have a certain expectation for the people that you're leading, whether that's a committee or whether if you're the president trying to lead people on your board, it's doing what you expect. If you expect people to arrive on time, get there early. If you expect people to come those prepared, have that president at the beginning of meetings. If you want people to be engaged, maybe try going above and beyond and planning or having just little surprises and whatnot. It's I would say like the fruits of your labor will be others following in your seed.
Gotcha. So I've been in this role now for 18 days, but I have served on the regional team as a region student representative, as a professional director. I've been on the regional team for some time. And one common question that I get from student chapters is like, hey, we're getting to the point where 2, 3 months in, and some of my e-board members are kind of like going MIA. I can't really get them to engage with the like strategic side of things or planning or executing side of things. Some chapters have told me that a way that they go around that is by having more sort of e-board bonding activities, or like, hey, let's go have like a game night on Friday to kind of bring that sense of familia back. Because sometimes if you're in this ship grind, it could be work, 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 and some folks might treat it as like a business. Is there something that you do for your chapter that works, that you could maybe share with chapters tuning in?
Oh, absolutely. This is something that I'm really proud of, and one of the reasons why I love being on the board is when you start your position, end of spring, entering in the summer, we annually have a retreat for the board, and it's a transition
Mm,
retreat where the previous board teaches the new board how to do their job, and this is something that's really effective in bonding people, because it usually takes place over a weekend. In the last few weeks of school, where we take everyone to Big Bear, which is like a nice like resort place in the mountains here in SoCal. And there we have people work together, they cook together, they clean together, um, and then they teach each other how to do things, as well as we do our SWOT analysis there. So I would say that is like our first and foremost like the beginning of bonding. And then there and thereafter, apart from like the board meetings, just before we have a quarter start, we have some sort of like bonding event, but also planning session. And it's during that we plan our whole quarter ahead of us, and we have some sort of like special event. So in the past, I've done like hiking, I've done like Secret Santa, going out to eat together, just like that sort of thing to get people to kind of mingle with each other. Because
mhm.
relating back to the example of how to lead with example to inspire others, I think if the core of your board doesn't feel comfortable with each other, it kind of won't shine and lead to the rest of your members.
No, that's good deal. So what I'm getting out of that is for everyone on the call, this is why you became a ship leader. Hopefully you're already working with your team now to come up with some sort of retreat or transition event for your e-board members. I think that's a really good way for retention transition. If you don't have that, you could have your next board come in and they're essentially trying to reinvent the wheel, right? Feel like have that sense of restarting from scratch. These sort of events help with that transition, and I know it helps everybody down the road. So we're getting really close on time. I've got two more questions I'm going to ask. One from the Q&A, and the last one's just going to be what piece of advice would you give to everyone on the call? But before I do that, I do want to remind folks that we have breakout sessions coming up, and we do have surveys for you all to fill out after this workshop. So it's funny enough, the question I pull relates to surveys and kind of along the same lines of like retention. What are effective ways to incentivize my members to complete surveys at the end of events? So please take notes and take survey right after this one.
um, I think the question, the way it's worded, is not at all what we do. Um, what we do, especially like for general meetings, which is where we take or where we have most of our surveys being answered, is we have people fill it out at the beginning, and that'll serve as their ticket to get the food. Because absolutely, asking, chasing after people to get them to answer surveys after the fact is incredibly hard. It's not effective. No one wants to do it. They're already focusing on their next project and homework assignment. So I think it's changing. It's not changing the survey itself, but changing how you deliver the survey.
That's a good
Yeah.
point. I would say a big lessons learned for us is we would, for whatever reason, send it out 2 weeks after. We're like, yeah, give everybody some time to like take a break. They see it 2 weeks later and like, yeah, I don't even remember what we talked about at whatever event. No, that's a good point. Good piece of advice there. And like I mentioned earlier, this will be the last question. So feel free to go crazy. Um, what last piece of advice would you give to chapters who are getting ready to go back to school? Some of the attendees in this call will be at President Summit. I know they're going to take in so much information, but what's something that worked for you? What's that last piece of advice you would share with everybody?
I have two things. Uh, First and foremost, you all volunteered to do this, and I'm very proud of you all for doing that because this is something that you didn't have to do. It's something you're doing. You're not doing this for money. You're doing this because you want to and because you love your chapters. And so with that, I just want to reinvigorate everyone to know that you were all voted into these positions, and so at least more than half of the people within your chapters believe that you were the best fit person to do this. And so no matter what sort of things your heart guides you to do, ideas that you want to put forth, have some confidence in what you're doing because at least more of the people believed in you. And so I want just want to remind you guys to believe in yourself because it's really powerful when you have your imagination, you let it run free, and you have that freedom to do what you think is best for your chapter. And then lastly, just remember you're not alone. There's tons of people who have done the exact same position as you. There's people who, from previous positions who have done what you've done. There's people within the ship community, especially you chapter presidents and vice presidents who are going to the President Summit later in August. That is a whole wealth of knowledge just waiting for you all. And never feel like you have to do it alone. There's always someone to ask for help, whether something wrong happens, whether some inconvenience or random problem arises. There's always someone to lean on.
Perfect. Yeah, no, I'm definitely glad that you pointed that out. So I'll just do a quick shout out for all the regional team, the regional leaders. They're there to help support you, as well as the ship staff. Anyone and everyone that you ask will say, hey, like, how can I help? Sometimes you might not even have questions, but when you do, reach out. They're your go-tos. So much wealth of knowledge. You're not alone in this. So thank you for sharing that. But yeah, that brings us to the end of our workshop. I know there were tons of questions that we did not get to, so I will have to bite somebody to make sure they answer these and send them out to y'all. But again, we do have a survey. I don't know if a QR code is going to pop up here or if there's going to be a slide, but that's all I have. I appreciate you all for joining, and yeah, enjoy the rest of CCLP. And for those of you going to President Summit, hopefully we see you there.